Dean Ambrose's return to the WWE ring was a long time coming, and fans understandably lost their minds once his familiar music hit 6 nights before SummerSlam 2018. Sure, he is a little bit buffer than we all remember, and he may have trimmed his unkempt hairstyle into a more conservative look, but he's still the same lunatic fringe that millions of fans miss dearly. Without him, WWE programming lacked a certain amount of mayhem and danger, the two key elements that combined to form his signature blend. Ambrose has come a long way in not just his wrestling career, but also his life. To see the real-life Jonathan Good standing tall at the end of the 2016 Money in the Bank pay-per-view holding the WWE Championship aloft was to see more than a decade's worth of dedication and toil pay off for a man who had to scratch and claw for everything he ever earned. Though Ambrose is famously averse to social media, choosing not to put his entire life on display for the world, we've learned a few fascinating things about the steely-eyed roughhouse, from his background to the particulars of his wrestling career. So buckle up and get ready, because this list is all about the psychotic third of the Shield Trio. I'm Sam from Cultaholic.com, and these are 10 things you didn't know about Dean Ambrose. Join us! Number 10. The struggle to survive. Many success stories in the fields of sports and entertainment have been written about individuals that came from tattered and humble beginnings, and Ambrose is far from an exception. Growing up in a very rough section of Cincinnati's east side, Ambrose and his sister had to learn self-reliance, with a father largely out of the picture and a mother that had to work long late-night shifts in order to provide for the family. By Ambrose's own admission, his environment was a very negative one. He claims that there were even times when he had to resort to selling drugs on behalf of others just so he wouldn't catch a beating. Other times he would be bullied by the other dwellers of the neighborhood. Ambrose says that he had to fight back in order to earn respect, not that it meant anything to him long term. He wanted out of the hellish living conditions and vowed to escape into a better life. Number 9. Inspiring performances. Ambrose found refuge in professional wrestling, instantly becoming hooked on it upon discovery. He would come to collect many wrestling videotapes, some of which he rented and others he admits to outright stealing. But he wouldn't be deterred by piddling matters like the law. He had a hobby, and it was one that gave him hope. Ambrose's love of professional wrestling wasn't centered on one particular wrestler or promotion, though he does admit that one wrestler stood out to him and became his idol. In a 2010 interview with Slam Sports, Ambrose admits to looking up to Bret the Hitman Hart, admiring the way in which Hart persevered in spite of any and all odds that he faced. Though he didn't make the connection at the time, Ambrose would realize that the connection he felt with Hart was because of his own struggles to overcome difficulties. Though his hindrances were not muscle-bound opponents between the ropes, they were the everyday struggles of his surroundings. Hart, among many others, would only magnetize Ambrose deeper into the realm of professional wrestling. Number 8. The waiting game. At age 16, Ambrose would find his opening at a Heartland Wrestling Association card, printed in an event program. The program advertised promoter/trainer Les Thatcher's wrestling school, which prompted Ambrose to reach out to Thatcher to express his interest. Eventually, the school-aged Ambrose showed up during a training session claiming to be 18 years old. Shortly after that, his real age was discovered, and he was told that he couldn't train until he turned 18. Ambrose was enraged by Thatcher's then refusal to train him, but he would soon fall under the tutelage of local wrestler/trainer Cody Hawk, who allowed Ambrose to observe the classes for hours at a time, while paying his dues by selling concessions, sweeping floors, and setting up the ring. Eventually, Ambrose would begin his formal training with Hawk, albeit at age 17. He would train for several days a week under Hawk before making his in-ring debut in 2004 at the age of 18. Number 7. Near early entry. Shortly after WrestleMania 27 in 2011, it was confirmed that Ambrose had signed with WWE after less than 7 years as a working professional wrestler. In the preceding few years, Ambrose, as Jon Moxley, had built up a strong cult following in places like CZW, Full Impact Pro, Dragon Gate USA, and Evolve, making his signing not all too surprising. What may be surprising is that Ambrose was nearly hired by WWE 4 years earlier. He'd worked some dark matches and jobber bouts in the mid-2000s and had a contact in WWE in the form of Mike Bucci, the former Simon Dean, or Nova, or Hollywood Nova of the BWO, whatever your tastes are, who was now working for John Laurinaitis in talent relations. Ambrose revealed in a shoot interview that Bucci was making the big push to sign him in the summer of 2007, and was apparently on the verge of bringing Ambrose into the fold, but bad luck reared its head. Bucci was fired at the end of August 2007 after his name was linked to the very public Signature Pharmacy scandal. Without Bucci to advocate for his hiring, Ambrose's indie career continued. Number 6. Name with a cause. Like many inbound wrestlers of the time, Jon Moxley couldn't just be Jon Moxley in WWE, and a name change was imminent. Ambrose was hesitant about parting with that name since he'd always simply been Jon throughout his life, but he eventually submitted to the renaming process, even coming up with some ideas of his own. Ultimately though, his new moniker would come from the mind of a true wrestling legend. It was Dusty Rhodes, by now demonstrating his creative skills for WWE's developmental program, who was first to speak the name. According to Ambrose on an episode of Talk is Jericho, the American Dream breathed the words Dean Ambrose, Dean James Dean, drawing a comparison between the young Moxley and the 1950s screen icon who set rebellious hearts ablaze with his cool, calm, and mysterious charm. Rhodes thought the name was very strong, but Ambrose was initially disgusted, thinking that Dean made him sound too much like a frat boy. But hey, you can't say that that name has hindered Ambrose's momentum in the slightest, can you? Number 5. The Lost Feud. Ambrose's unbridled actions and unfiltered thoughts spilled out with something of a refined eloquence, almost as though he were born decades too late to be the center of a Clockwork Orange. He would draw comparisons to the likes of Brian Pillman and Raven for his well-honed madness and villainy, and would have been just the type to fit in seamlessly with the prismatic crazies in ECW. In fact, WWE had even intended to pit Ambrose against a certain hardcore legend in 2012 before later debuting him in The Shield. At WrestleMania 28's Fan Access, Ambrose confronted the then 47-year-old Mick Foley, who had last taken part in a match at the 2012 Royal Rumble. Ambrose called Foley out, holding him accountable for inspiring the wrestlers that came after him to absolutely destroy themselves. This was supposed to lead to a match between the two at the 2012 SummerSlam, giving Ambrose a major angle right off the bat. However, Foley was unable to gain medical clearance and would opt to formally retire from wrestling, seemingly for good. It was a horrible lost opportunity, but at least Ambrose's actual debut match was a great one, as he and his Shield teammates won a hellacious match at the TLC pay-per-view. Number 4. Modern conveniences. To many observers, Dean Ambrose and wife Renee Young look like an odd couple. She's as bubbly and enthusiastic as he is low-key and understated. She's a cheerful journalist, he's an unshaven brawler. While the two certainly have more in common than meets the kayfabe eye and are evidently quite happy together, they do seem like a bit of an odd couple, and it turns out that their wedding was even odder. Instead of a lavish, stately wedding, the two were married spur of the moment in the early morning hours of a random Sunday. Shortly after Ambrose gave a formal enough proposal, right before the couple were intending to go to bed, the two used Yelp to contact a 24-hour pastor who didn't live far from their residence. After contacting another friend who had to be woken up to act as witness, Ambrose and Young were officially married in their backyard at 1 in the morning. Scoff if you will, but at least nobody involved was attacked with a cobra or pile-driven by an irate Kane. Number 3. Made in America. In 2013, Dean Ambrose became the first Shield member to win singles gold on the main WWE roster, defeating Kofi Kingston to win the United States Championship at the Extreme Rules pay-per-view. Ambrose would go on to hold the championship for 351 days, losing it to Sheamus in a 20-man battle royal on an episode of Raw in May 2014. While the reign is somewhat notable for Ambrose's infrequent title defenses, the length does earn him a place in history. At 351 days, Ambrose has the longest US title reign under the WWE banner, narrowly topping MVP's 343-day reign that stretched from May 2007 to April 2008. However, in the 43-plus year history of the US title as a whole, Ambrose has the third longest reign behind Rick Rude's 378-day run that began in November 1991 and Lex Luger's mammoth 523-day reign that began in May 1989. Ambrose, along with MVP, are the only two men to break 300 days under the WWE header, as Shelton Benjamin's 240-day reign from a decade ago still sits at a distant third. Number 2. Combat Veteran. Much has been made of Dean Ambrose's past, particularly his coming of age in Combat Zone Wrestling under his old Jon Moxley name. From a one-year stretch from February 2010 to February 2011, sans a one-week period in August 2010, Ambrose was CZW World Champion, with many fans predicting future greatness for young Mox. Would they have guessed that he'd be WWE Champion 6 years later? Well, you'd have to ask them, the lovely, scary, angry bunch. As of his big win at the 2016 Money in the Bank, Ambrose is, so far, the only man to have held both the WWE and CZW World Championships. A fact that many CZW-affiliated talents and staffers noted on the night Ambrose cashed in against Rollins. It seemed very unlikely that a man who once competed in the annual spectacle known as the Tournament of Death would ever be WWE's top dog. underdog, but Ambrose has defied pretty much all conventions on his way up. Other CZW champions that also have a presence on WWE programming today include Drew Gulak, Oni Lorcan, Cassius Ohno, Lio Rush, and current NXT official Drake Wuertz, though none have quite reached Ambrose's level of success. Which reminds us that Dean Ambrose versus Nick Gage at WrestleMania 35 would be awesome, if not a little bit off-putting for Snickers, but please book it please. And number 1, Mox is money. So, as noted, Ambrose won the WWE Championship by cashing in his Money in the Bank briefcase on Seth Rollins the very night he won the contract, fulfilling a 2-year promise in roundabout fashion to keep Rollins from holding the WWE Championship. Yes, Rollins did reign the previous year, but it still counts, trust us. The match made Ambrose one of only 2 babyfaces to ever cash in their briefcase at the end of a pay-per-view and remain a babyface, even after winning. The other was Rob Van Dam 10 years earlier, who called his shot in advance before frog-splashing John Cena in the main event of One Night Stand 2006. Both CM Punk's 2009 and Randy Orton's 2013 cash-ins saw the 2 men veer onto the heel side of the fence, since each cashed in on a beloved babyface. This also makes Ambrose the only babyface to cash in on an official heel at the end of a pay-per-view to win a world title. And I guess that's almost as cool as competing in the Tournament of Death. God, I really want to go to there. And that's our list. I've been Sam from Cultaholic.com. You can follow me on Twitter here. You can follow all of us at Cultaholic. If you like what we do here at Cultaholic, you can check us out on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Cultaholic. And don't ever forget to hit subscribe and join us.